Hey guys, here I am with your study guide, and please remember that there are tons of extra resources and textbook practice problems and video links and other stuff that you can look at to help you get ready for this test. So I'm going to let you know the different sections of the textbook that you can look through as well to do extra practice problems for each of these. I'm going to go through this pretty fast because this is kind of like the end of the unit kind of review. The point of this video is not to really reteach you. It's just to make sure that you remember stuff that you've already learned. So if you need to go back and look at some other stuff, I'm going to let you know what parts of the book that comes from too. So for example, the first two problems where you're translating algebraic expressions, both of these problems can be found in section 1-1 of your textbook. I am attaching extra practice problems in a key in case you're not sure after I work these couple problems. Okay, so the first one says write an algebraic expression, and it's the expression 5 less than the product of 3 and a number. Now, I find it handy to kind of annotate, like right over the top. So first of all, I know that a product means that I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to put a little X there to make multiplication. And I know that obviously 3 is the number 3 and a number. Remember that we use a variable. I'm going to use the letter N to represent number. So the product of 3 and a number. Well, I obviously write that as a 3 sitting next to the M because product means multiply, and that's how we represent multiplication. Now, a lot of people do this part wrong when they say 5 less than. Remember that when it's a number less than, you're actually subtracting that number out. So the final one is going to be 3n, so the product of 3 and a number, and then 5 less than that means you would be taking away 5. So whenever you see less than, that is the number you're actually subtracting. For number 2, remember that a quotient is the fancy word for division. So we're dividing things. Of a number, I'm going to use the letter N to represent the number, and 6 cubed, so cubed is with an exponent of 3. Remember, I'm not accepting this little baby, elementary school division anymore. We are big kids now. We are going to represent division with a fraction, so it's going to be N over 6 cubed. This next section of the study guide all comes from section 1-2 of the book, the Order of Operations chapter, in case you need some more practice problems. So I'm going to start here at number 3. So my order of operations, first of all, says that I need to do what's in those parentheses first. So I'm going to do 5 minus 4. I'm going to rewrite it all. Then I'm going to apply that exponent next. 1 to the second power, of course, means 1 times 1, which is simply going to be a 1. So then if I add that 1 that I have remaining, that means my answer should be 2. Here at number 4, I'm going to look inside of these parentheses first, and I see that I've got several operations, and I've got adding and 2 different sets of subtracting. Remember, adding and subtracting is a set. You just do whichever one comes first from left to right. So I'm going to do the 2 plus 6 and get 8. Then I'm going to subtract the 2 and get 6. Then I'm going to subtract the 4 in there, and I'm going to get 2. So that takes care of everything inside of those parentheses. And then I'm going to bring this down. On my screen, I know this kind of looks like an addition. Hopefully the copy you got, I hope our copy machines weren't too bad. This is a division symbol that kind of looks like an addition symbol on my screen. Sorry about that, guys. So 6 divided by 2 means that your final answer should be a 3. Next, we're being given values for the variables that we have, and we need to evaluate them after we substitute them. So what do I mean by that? So here, y is equal to -5. So I'm going to rewrite this, and instead of a y, I'm going to put in here a -5. That subtraction symbol still needs to stay. I've got an open parenthesis, and instead of a z, I'm going to replace it with a 4 minus. Instead of a y squared, I'm going to do, and I'm going to put it in parentheses because it's got another minus here. So see what I just did here. I noticed in class, this is where a lot of you guys were going wrong right here, is that you weren't necessarily paying attention to the fact that y is a -5. So this right here needs to be a -5, but I've still got this other negative that's inside of here. Okay, so there's really like two negatives going on. There's the minus that's there inside of the parentheses, and then there's also the negative that is part of what y is equal to. So that's going to kind of impact things a little bit when I'm evaluating. So the first step that I'm going to do inside of these parentheses is I'm going to do the -5 squared. Well, -5 times -5 is a positive 25. Now, I still haven't done anything yet with that subtraction right there. I had to deal with the exponent first. So now the rest of my parentheses is 4 minus 25. Well, 4 minus 25 is a -21. I notice I didn't give myself enough room here, so I'm going to kind of scooch this over to the side to finish out the rest of it. So I've got, actually, no, I'm not. Hold on one second, guys. I'm going to do this one over. If you want to like fast forward, you can, but I just realized I need to give myself a little bit more room because I think it might be confusing for you. So again, I'm going to replace that y with a -5. Got a subtraction there. I'm going to replace that z with a 4 minus -5 because that's what y is equal to. And I'm going to square it. And then I'm going to close my parentheses. Then I'm going to do that -5 times -5, which gave me 25. I still have the 4 and the subtraction symbol in there. And I'm going to bring the rest of this down. I know we don't like to rewrite all of our steps, but man, I think it's so helpful to see what's going on here. So 4 minus 25 is a -21. I'm going to keep those parentheses right now just to keep it organized. So this is a -5, and I still have my subtraction. So remember that when you are subtracting a negative, that's really going to turn it into a positive. So this problem is now going to be written as -5 plus 21. And if I add a -5 to a positive 21, that is going to give me a positive 16. Thanks for bearing with me on that one, guys. That was a lot. Okay, so now here I'm going to replace this m with a -5 because that's what it tells me it's worth. Minus, and I'm going to now remember this minus is separate from the minus that shows me as part of the p. Okay, so I still need that in there. Now to replace this p, I'm going to put in a -5. So once again, I've got two negatives if I did my subtraction correctly. Then I'm going to close my parentheses, put the exponent on the outside, and then I've still got plus 6 and divided by 6 in the rest of my problem. So I need to take care of what's in the parentheses first, and inside I've got a -5 minus a -5. Well, again, minus a negative is really going to turn that into a plus. So a -5 plus a -5 is simply a 0. Well, if I square a 0, I still have a 0. Okay? Now I'm going to bring down the rest of my problem. I've got that plus 6 and that divided by 6. So we know that we need to divide before we add. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. And last but not least, 0 plus 1 means I finally get my answer of a positive 1. Number 7, we've got some properties to match up here. So this first one, we are multiplying something by 0, and it ends up turning it into a 0. Obviously, anytime you multiply anything by 0, it becomes 0. That is representative of B, the multiplicative property of 0. So use your common sense when you're trying to do this measurement or this matching tomorrow, guys. Obviously, there's multiplication in there. So it's got to be something to do with multiplying, and you're multiplying by 0. So you can really just kind of use some logical reasoning in case you blank out and just forget to. Okay, the second one, notice how it's exactly the same equation, but it's just flipped. It's kind of like they're a mirror image of each other. So y equals 2x, and now it's 2x equals y. Well, whenever the equations are mirror images of each other, we say that they have symmetry. So that is the symmetric property. -3 plus a positive 3, we added two opposites and got 0, so that is why it's D, the additive inverse property, which just leaves the commutative property. Here I have 2 plus 4. Here I have 4 plus 2. The order of the numbers changed. I want you to pay attention to the difference between commutative and symmetric. Okay, so when I had symmetric, kind of like I already said, but I want to make sure I really hit this home. Notice how with symmetric, oops, let me erase this here. Okay, so here I have y equals 2x, then I have 2x equals y. The equations are like mirror images of each other. That is symmetry, okay? But then with the commutative property, I still have the same thing on both sides. I can see why this might be a little bit confusing because it does kind of look like a mirror image too. But here I have two different things on opposite sides of the equal sign, okay, that flipped. Here I have the same things on both sides of the equal sign. I still have a 2 and a 4. It's just that their order changed. So it wasn't like the entire equation just picked up and flipped over like it is here. Okay, so I hope that clarifies a little bit. Remember, we got lots of extra properties practice that you can do in the book. Oh yeah, and I forgot to tell you that those number properties questions can be found in section 1-3 of your textbook. Okay, the ones I'm doing right now, distributive and combining like terms, can be found in section 1-4 of the book in case you want a little bit more practice. I'm going to go ahead and work these though. So the distributive property, remember I got to take that 7 and distribute it to everything inside the parentheses because it means I'm multiplying. So negative 7 times 1 means I'm going to have a negative 7. And a negative 7 times 4, that is a negative 28x, not a positive 28x. So I should have negative 7 minus 28x. For number 9, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to distribute 10 times negative 3 is negative 30. And then 10 times 10b is plus 100b. Number 10, don't do this addition first. And in the first place, you can't even add 2n to 6 really because they're not like terms, so hopefully you weren't tempted to do that. The first thing you got to do is this distributive property right here. Kind of get those terms out of the parentheses so that you can actually do something with them. So 6 times negative 9 is a negative 4n. 6 times 10 is 60. I'm going to bring down that 2n to go with it. Because this is a negative 44, this problem really becomes just 2n minus 54. So 2n minus 54n is negative 52n. If I only have 2 n's but I take away 54, I'm going to end up in the hole because I don't have enough. Plus 60. I don't have any like terms I can combine anymore because you can't combine an n and a 60. Here I'm going to do my distributive property again. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times 2 is minus 10. Then here I've got 4 times negative 4x, which is negative 16x. And then I've got 4 times negative 3, which is minus 12. I'm going to combine all of my like terms. I've got a negative 5 and a negative 16, which is a negative 21x. And then I've got a negative 10 and a negative 12, which means that's going to be a minus 22. All right, so for number 12 and 13, this comes from section 1-5. Actually, these last 4 problems come from section 1-5, all the different problem solving and real life applications of the problems. And so finding the appropriate unit. So the amount of sugar used in a large wedding cake. Okay, so a wedding cake can be pretty good sized, right? Like a few tiers. So if we were measuring in ounces, we would be dealing with a whole lot of ounces. Like, I mean, there's 8 ounces in a cup alone. So, man, that would be, ounces is too small if we're talking about the sugar that we're going to need for a large wedding cake. And especially with it being a wedding cake, nobody cares how much sugar is in there. So you're going to put quite a bit of sugar in a wedding cake. So ounces is too small. Gallons is obviously, we're not going to put gallons of sugar, even if it's in, I mean, it would have to be like a Guinness Book of World Records kind of wedding cake. So the one that makes sense is B, cups. And then for number 13, the length of a softball field. Obviously, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not playing softball on a field that's miles and miles long. Inches is going to be way too tedious. I mean, we could measure it in inches, but man, that would be a lot of little itty bitty inches that you would have to measure. So yards, in this case, is the one that would make the most sense for the most appropriate unit. Okay, for number 14, the driver's test has 60 questions on it. I'm going to be annotating here. To pass, so in order to pass, one must earn an 80%. To be eligible to take it again in a week, I'm going to say W for week, one must earn, so this is, I would just focus on the 60%, not necessarily the range of the 60 to 79, because we already kind of know that if they get above a 60, but they're not counted in the passing, that they're going to count. So I'm just going to focus on the 60%. One must wait a month if he earns a 40%, so you got to wait a month for 40. And if you get below a 40, you're barred from driving for life. That's not really true, by the way, guys. They'll let you take it over. Although I think there are some people, probably myself included, who should be barred for life from driving. But let's figure out how many of each tester fell into each category. So let's first of all figure out how many passed. So if you had to get 80% of the 60 questions, we all know the shortcut for that is to do 0.80 times 60. So that means that if you got 48 questions, that you passed the test. So this is saying how many of today's testers, here are all today's tester scores. So how many of them fell into each category? So right now I'm looking for the kids who passed, so who got over a 48. So that would be this lucky guy here. So I'm going to put a P above him. And I'm going to put a little P above her, because those are the only two people that took the driver's test today that passed. So now let's figure out who's eligible to take it in a week. So we want to know who got at least a 60% but didn't get high enough to pass. So 60% of 60. So these are people, I'm going to get this 48 out of the way. If we do 0.60 times 60, we get 36. So you had to get at least 36 points to be eligible in a week. So let's look at who was eligible who got a 36 but didn't actually get to pass. So this person can take it in a week. That person can take it in a week. And that person can take it after a week. So we've got 3 people who are eligible to take it again after a week. One must wait a month if they get, so between a 40 to a 59. So we really just need to worry about the 40%. So 40% of 60 and 0.40 times 60 means those are people who got a 24. So let's say you got above a 24 but didn't fall into the other 2 higher categories. So that would be, this guy right here. So eligible to take it in a month. The one with a 32 got over a 24 but not high enough to make it into either the higher passing category or you'll be able to do it in a week. So that leaves all these other poor souls as being barred for life. So we got 1, 2, and 3 people who got below a 24, so they are barred for life. So in the passing category, we have 2 people that are eligible in a week. There are 3 people who are eligible after a month to retake it. There's 1 of those people. And then there are 3 who are barred for life from ever driving. Okay, last but certainly not least, because this is very real life stuff that we need to know about, anytime you apply for a loan company will actually determine your debt to income ratio. So in this case, Rachel wants to buy a vacation home, sorry about the misspelling, guys, and needs a loan. So her monthly expenses, so the things that she has going out, include $1,200 for rent, a $700 car payment, and then $100 in other debt. Her monthly income is $800, and in order to qualify for the loan, her debt to income ratio. Okay, so a ratio, we all know, is when you compare 2 numbers. We do frequently use a fraction to represent that, so I'm going to do that here. So because it's a debt to income ratio, remember back from 6th grade that when you're dealing with ratios, the order that you say them matters. So because the debt comes first in the statement, debt to income ratio, that means the debt is going to go on top of your ratio. Income is going to go on the bottom. So we figure out her debt. We've got that $1,200 plus the $700 plus the $1,000. So that means that she is spending $2,000 a month on things going out. And then her income is given to us, so that is $8,000. So her debt to income ratio is that she has $2,000 in debt going out compared to $8,000 in income coming in. So what is that as a decimal? Well, I'm going to go up here. And I know that I can cancel out these zeros because I have one in the top and one in the bottom, which is going to leave me with a simplified fraction. Well, not quite simplified yet, but 2 over 8, which simplifies to 1 over 4. Well, we better know that 1/4 of a dollar is 0.25. So her debt to income ratio is a 0.25. So this is saying, does she qualify? So in order to qualify for the loan, it must be below a 0.30. That means that 30% of her income or below has to go out to money she already owes. So yes, and she qualifies BC because 0.25 or 25 hundredths, I should speak like a mathematician, 25 hundredths is smaller than 30 hundredths. Remember, you got to give me a reason tomorrow in case you, hint, 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 happen to see something like this again. Okay, keep studying hard. Look for more stuff to do. Make sure you're ready tomorrow. Have a good one.